In this episode, I'm going to go over a strategy that you can use to stop overthinking as an athlete. Hey there, I'm Eli Straw, mental performance coach and the founder of SuccessStartsWithin.com. Now, where does overthinking come from? Why is it that we overthink even the simplest parts of our game? Let's take our mechanics as an example. Why is it that we overthink our mechanics and we question ourselves and think, am I doing this right? Or maybe I should change this part of my technique and I should, alter it in this way or that way. Why is it that we do that? Let's take another example. Why is it that we overthink what coach is thinking and whether or not coach will play us in the next game? Or maybe we overthink where we'll be a year from now, whether we'll make it on that team or whether we'll make it to the next level. Why is it that we overthink? Well, there are many different kind of places that we can look for the driving force for this type of overthinking, but at the end of the day, it's all about control. We're trying to control the future. We're trying to control these things within our game, like our mechanics. We're trying to control our playing time. We are trying to control where we get to in terms of our sport, right? So what level we reach, or even what people are thinking about us. This overthinking is based in our desire to control whatever it is that we want to have happen, or whatever it is that we want to avoid. Now, I was talking to an athlete the other day about this idea of overthinking. And she has a competition coming up, and during that competition, she really wants to perform well. But what she's experiencing right now in the lead up to that competition is a lot of stress because of this overthinking. And so now she's starting to overthink how she'll end up doing during the competition. She's overthinking her training right now and asking herself, is my training actually leading to me doing well in the competition? She's overthinking what other people are thinking about her and how other people will view her if she does well or if she doesn't do well. So she's overthinking a lot about this competition because she really wants to do well. And when we really want to do well, right? So when we want to have the future be a certain result, we end up trying to control that future now. But really the only way that we can control the future, if we're thinking about it, is to worry about it. Now, there are many ways that we can influence the future, which I'll talk about here in a second. But if we're just simply thinking about how the game will go or where we'll get to within our sport, that's where we see overthinking come into play. Overthinking is also driven by doubt. Now, if I were to kind of layer these, I would say that control and worry, right? So this worry about what the future will be, and so our need to control that's going to be the number one reason, or the number one driver for this overthinking. But then there are other factors that play into it, and self-doubt is one of them. If you are doubting yourself a lot and you're not sure about your skills, you're not really sure that you'll be able to go out there and perform well, then you're going to overthink more. Because when you have high levels of trust in yourself, you don't really overthink. You know that you can go out there and play well, so what's the point of really questioning yourself right now about it? What's the point of going, over and over again in your mind how your mechanics are or what you need to do in order to play well? You just have the trust that you can do it, right? So we know that self-doubt is also going to impact this overthinking, because when you doubt yourself, you'll worry more, and then when you worry more, you're trying to control what that result will end up being in the first place. So if we know that overthinking is driven by this desire to control the future, this desire to have the outcome be what you want it to be, have other people to think about you as a good player, get to the next level. Whatever it ends up being, that you're overthinking, we know that we're trying to control something. That's going to help us when it comes to our strategy. Because my favorite strategy for managing overthinking is to leverage the idea of wanting to play well, wanting to control the future, but leverage it in a good way. And so what I was talking to this athlete about the other day was about how, she has this upcoming competition and she's overthinking the competition. So she's overthinking her training, she's worrying a lot, and her mind's racing. And so we were talking about that, and I was explaining to her how, when our minds are so consumed with this anxiety and this worry, we are trying to control whatever it is in the future that we want to have happen. So in her case, it's performing well during the competition. As we try to control that future, we keep thinking about it, because thinking about it and overthinking and analyzing and dwelling, that feels like control in the moment, even though we're not really doing anything to help ourselves. In fact, we are probably only increasing stress that will lower our chances of performing well. So she and I were talking about how if she knows that she's trying to control the future, we want to leverage that idea of wanting to control something and then give ourselves something that's actually helpful to be able to control. And so this is where we focus our attention on more of the controllables that lead to the result that we want. And so in her instance, in her case, it was she wants to focus on what she can control today to help herself perform well during the competition. Now, this is by no means an easy thing to do, but it honestly is that back and forth that helps when it comes to reducing overthinking. Because if we try to think our way out of overthinking, where we're just trying to figure something out, the truth is we're not going to be able to figure anything out, because what is it that we're overthinking? We're overthinking the future. How can I solve the problem of overthinking and analyzing and overanalyzing the future and overthinking my mechanics and overthinking what other people are thinking about me? How can I try to solve the problem in my head of whatever it is that I'm overthinking if it's not really something that I can control in the first place? So we have to work on completely redirecting our attention and taking it off of whatever it is that we're overthinking and trying to identify something very simple that we can control to give ourselves that feeling and that sense of control. So for example, if I'm overthinking my mechanics and I'm just dwelling on my mechanics, if I'm in practice, I would want to simplify it down to one thing that I can control right now about the drill I'm doing. So maybe that's giving full effort and fully focused on the drill that I'm doing. If I'm in a game, it's simplifying it down to, well, what can I control about my mechanics right now to help myself play well, right? An example is if you're a baseball hitter and you're trying to overthink your mechanics with your swing, you'd want to simplify it down to just focusing on, your load, or just focusing on your balance, or simply just watching the ball. But we've got to simplify our attention onto what we can control, because we know that the core of this overthinking is driven by the need and the desire to control the future, control our performance, control what other people are thinking. We've got to leverage that idea of control and give ourselves something to focus on that we actually can control. Otherwise, we're just going to spin our wheels and keep overthinking and keep dwelling, and keep worrying and worrying and worrying. So that's really the first big shift that we want to work on making. The second thing that we want to try to adopt, and admittedly this one's incredibly difficult, is we want to try to adopt more of a letting go attitude. What I mean by that is when I was talking to the athlete that I was mentioning earlier, I gave her a really silly example. I said, I want you to look down and imagine that your shoe was untied. If your shoe was untied, what would you do? Would you overthink it, or would you just tie your shoe? She said, I would just tie my shoe. So then I asked her, well, what would you do if you were thinking about if your shoe would come untied tomorrow? Would you overthink it? Would you worry about it right now? And she honestly laughed and she said, well, why would I worry about my shoe not being tied tomorrow, or my shoelace being untied tomorrow? Why would I worry about that right now? And I said, that is the exact approach that we're trying to take to all these different parts of your game. Why would you overthink and worry about what other people are thinking or what your performance will be when you're not controlling it right now, right? You can't control it right now. It's not happening right now. And then with the shoelace example, I said, well, if your shoe is untied tomorrow and you're at that moment tomorrow, what would you do? Would you worry about it, or would you just tie it? She said, I would just tie it. And that's the idea here. When we're overthinking things, we are overthinking things that are going to happen in the future. We're worried about what our performance will look like, right? We're stressed about all these things that are taking place in the future that we cannot control in the present moment. And the more we dwell on them, the more we worry about them, the more we're taking our attention away from the present moment. And even more than that, we can't actually control them. So when we simplify it down to an analogy like, your shoelace being untied tomorrow, it's funny to even think about worrying about something so simple, because number one, we don't know if it's going to happen. We can't control that right now. And number two, if it does happen, we're just going to be handling it. And so then this is when I was tying it into her performance for her. And I was saying, if you're worried about your competition, you can't control that right now, outside of making sure that you're doing what you can do today, which is what I was mentioning earlier with the controllables, right? You can't control or worry about, or you shouldn't worry about whether your shoe will come untied tomorrow. Make sure your shoe's untied today. It's the only thing you can do right now. But then she and I were talking about how if something bad does happen, she messes up, she loses, somebody thinks poorly of her, at that point, she's not overthinking it or worrying about it. She's just handling it just like she would be handling her shoe coming untied. So what I really mean here with these last kind of few points is that we want to make sure that we are practicing letting go of these things in the future and not worrying so much about the things that we can't control in the present moment. And that's the best way to eliminate this overthinking, because we're overthinking things that we cannot control. Because if we can control them, we don't need to overthink them. We just need to take action, right? We're trying to make things perfect with our mechanics. We're trying to control what other people think. We're trying to control the future performance that we're going to have. But the truth is those things are out of our control. So we want to practice letting go of those worries, being present, and above all, make sure that you're focusing on what you can control right now, because you want to give yourself something to control, because we know that the desire to control is really at the core of this overthinking in the first place. So for yourself, whenever you're overthinking, remind yourself that overthinking is not helping anything. Try to simplify it down to the simplest controllable thing that you want to focus on right now, whether you're competing or whether you're training. And then let's overall try to adopt this letting go mindset and attitude where we recognize that there are so many things out of our control that are going to happen in the future, and it's pointless to worry about them, just like you would laugh if you were worried about whether or not your shoe was going to come untied tomorrow. So let's just practice letting them go, and again, bringing our attention back into the present moment. That's a great way to work to manage overthinking as an athlete. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos each week on sports psychology and mental training. And if you're interested in one-on-one coaching or any of the programs that I have available, I've put links to those in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I wish you the best of success in all that you do.